All right, what's up, guys? Let me turn this music as far down as I can. All right, design here. We're 2 days away now, right? College baseball season is officially here. Going to be talking matchups, um, which teams are, see how they do the for opening weekend. Right, Friday is going to be pretty exciting because we got some early action games like Clemson, Oklahoma State. We've already talked about. We're going to be covering that. Graham, what's up, man? What's up? How you doing? Welcome back. Yeah, sorry I couldn't stream or I couldn't get on here yesterday. Um, I had that meeting and then ultimately with rain and everything, the high school team I'm helping out with, a game got moved up. And so I basically had to go from that meeting, had another meeting after that, and then had to leave to get going, to get to the facility to get some BP in and everything, and then get to the game. Um, so that was the reason for my absence yesterday. Um, why is this? Golly, I can't even remember how I do my own hair. There we go. All right. But yeah, Graham, we're gonna get into a bunch of stuff. We're gonna talk about this was something I have a video coming out about this later, but we're gonna talk a little bit about um, how catchers are evaluated now versus in the past. That was actually one of you guys, one of our YouTube subscribers and guys who watches the streams that emailed me and asked me to cover it because I think his son was a catcher or is a catcher. So we will talk about that as well. And I think that is a good question just because the reality is that I think a lot of people, especially at the catcher position, don't realize um, how things have changed as far as in recruiting and what skill set is most important. Like if you're talking bat, framing ability, blocking, catch and throw, what are the most important things? That has definitely changed in the last, let's just say, 15 years. It's definitely changed. And so that was a question that someone wanted answered. So I got a full, like, it's going to be probably 14-minute video coming out later today. But we'll talk about it. That's some in here as well. I want to say I'm waiting for Canes to comment because Kane sent me something insane yesterday. He sent me something insane, and I'll show you guys. I'm still battling this cough, man. Canes, I think, did you send it to my personal account or the Elite Sports Advising account? I think he. Okay, here we go, guys. So this is, I mean, especially as a. Let me zoom in on this so I don't. There we go. Okay. So this is from Canes. This is I guess this is from some betting site. I don't know where it's from, but he told me to send this to Georgia Tech's players and coaches. Opening night, Georgia Tech at home. Old Dominion is the favorite to win game one. Now, what this means, and we'll look into it right now, but what that probably means is that Old Dominion's got like a stud Friday guy, because that is strange, right? That is very strange. To go on the road to a Power Four school who's basically a projected regional team and be the favorite, right? That is a little bit strange, but I'm looking through their guys. Let's see who had the most starts. You know, I, I don't know, man. I'm looking through the hitting and the fielding, and pitching, I mean, and I'm not seeing anything that is would lead me to believe that. Now, again, Kane sent me this. I don't know where this is from. I don't know what website it is. It could be just some kind of random site that doesn't really know what they're doing, um, which is a possibility. Um, what is this? Okay, so we're gonna get into that. We'll talk about opening matchups from ACC, some SEC schools, and just kind of see who I think is favored. And like I said, get into the let me not click on this. Okay, I don't want to expose other people's messages that they've sent me. Um, but yeah, so no, I mean, obviously it's gonna be really exciting here. I had the meeting met with Matt Woods of Motor Preference Experts yesterday. Went really well. Um, think we're going to be doing, again, I don't want to say everything we talked about, but it went really well. I'll show you guys one of my, again, this is, these guys have been really appreciative of, let's see, good to have you back, Kyle. Off topic question: is it common knowledge and accepted that a kid's listed height is about 1 to 2 inches taller than his real height? Is this advisable? Yeah, it's common knowledge. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at like perfect game or prep baseball, um, like things could change. But even if you're looking at like college baseball rosters, like most of the time those numbers are inflated. So you have a lot of guys who like, and I think this is where I have people comment on my videos about how like all they want is like guys that are 6 foot or taller. Look at all the rosters in college baseball. Most of them are 6 foot or taller. Well, a lot of those guys that are listed as 6 foot or 6'1" are like 5'11" and a half or 5'11" or 5'10", and I'm 6 foot because some schools are more accurate than others, but like you don't really care if you're wrong about their height if they're on your team, right? So it's a good question, BA. It is common knowledge, you know. Drew Burris, I think, is listed on Georgia Tech's website as 5'9". I can double check that for real quick and just figure it out. So he's listed 5'9". He is not 5'9". Okay, he is not 5'9". But it doesn't matter because he's maybe the best player in college baseball, but he's not 5'9". And so now if you look up and down rosters and you're like, oh, it says he's 6'1". Oh, yeah, he may be 6 foot. Oh, this guy's 6 foot. He ain't 6 foot. He's 5'11". He's 5'10" probably. So again, different rosters are going to be more accurate. On Perfect Game, I mean, I know, for example, like on Perfect Game, I listed myself as 6 foot, I think, and I was like 5'10". So everyone does it, but like coaches, and like my whole point in bringing up the whole height thing is that there's so many guys out there that think like, oh, my son's 6'3", 200 pounds, like he's going D1. And part of me wants to be like, they don't care how big your son is. Is it a bonus if he's big? Sure. But if he's not a good baseball player, they could care how big he is or how small he is. They don't want him. They only care if the guy's a ball player. And that's what I run into a lot is I run into parents, or I see it on social media all the time. These guys who have no idea what they're talking about, have never played at a high level, coached at a high level, done any kind of talent evaluation at a high level. And they're like, well, my son's 6'3", 200, and he's really good at this position or whatever. And then you watch video and you're like, oh my gosh, I mean, he can't play. He can't play the position. I had a potential client, spoke with his dad a couple days ago, And he sent me some video recently, actually yesterday, of his son. He just kind of wanted to give, my thoughts on him. And he sent me probably 7 or 8 videos, and I watched two, and I'm like, kid can play. I don't need to watch anymore. I know he can play. I like his swing. Um, and so like a good tap, if you know ball, you see it very quickly. You see the guys that are good and the guys that aren't. And I don't need to watch 50 videos to know if a kid can play or not. So I need to bump my kid's height up on PG. Laugh out. I'm the honest idiot. It doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't. Well, again, you gotta be you gotta be a good player, right? No one, Danny Hall and Brian Prince and Tom Kinklar, who recruited me at Georgia Tech, they could care less that I was 5'9", 153 pounds. They knew I was a elite runner in the outfield, elite defender, and very good bat to ball. So I had a niche. I was a leadoff, going to be a leadoff guy, maybe a two-hole guy, or a bottom of the order bat. Like that's who I was. That was my profile. That's what I fit. Um, and again, they didn't recruit me because can you imagine? I end up being All American, first team All ACC, leading the ACC in hits. And if they had been like, oh man, you know what, we only recruit guys that are 190 pounds or more, then you just missed out on a really good player. Like, I'm trying to get parents and players to understand that they do not care how big or small you are. Like, don't get me wrong, if you're my size out of high school, you probably need to be running pretty well, or somehow have some power in your bat. But if you're 6'3", 200 and you can't run and you don't hit for power, they don't care either. They don't care either. um, Graham, did you train for speed, or were you just naturally fast? So I'm not gonna lie to you. My grandfather, like, it's very genetic in my family. My grandparents on both sides, my grandfathers on both sides. One was a college basketball player. One was a really good baseball player, and kind of could have gone pro. But back then, they didn't get paid anything, and he was like trying to get married and stuff, so he didn't. Both could really, really elite runners. My dad was an elite runner. I was probably faster than my dad, but my dad was like a 6'5", 60 runner, so very fast. My uncle, my dad's brother, same thing. Um, and then I was probably the fastest of my brothers. I was like on my peak, a kind of a 6'2", 60 runner, 6'3", for a long time. And my twin brother was, well, I mean, totally different players, but he was a good runner for his size. And being like a third baseman, he was still running in, I think, in like the 6'8" range out of high school. And then my younger brother, who's bigger than me, but also a center fielder, outfielder, was like a 6'5", 6'4" runner. So it's very genetic in my family, but you can do speed and agility training, speed training. Um, what a lot of people get wrong is, again, this is Graham. This is what we're talking about when we talk aerial terrestrial. If you're an aerial, you need to be doing like explosive lifts. You need to be doing like speed squats or quarter squats, like very quick, bouncy, explosive movements, because that is how your body works. Um, if you're terrestrial, get deep in those squats, like move heavy weight. Again, you probably want to still mix in some explosive stuff, but terrestrials are very much in the ground and using ground force and really pushing against the ground to create speed. Whereas a terrestrial is kind of bounding, right? They're just boom, 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 uh, quick, bouncy movements. So again, it depends on kind of what your motor preference is. And again, I know that now. I did not know that back in the day. But generally speaking, speed, if you're a terrestrial, the more force you put in the ground, probably the faster you're going to be. So you're stronger in your lower half. You're going to be faster. If you're an aerial, explosive lifts, box squats, box jumps. You could probably do like a speed box squat, quarter squats. Actually, me and Matt talked about this a little bit in our meeting yesterday, and just how, basically the thing I told him is, I said, listen, like, I was terrible at squats. Like, could not ever get in a deep squat position. I played with guys in college and in pro ball who just like, man, they could touch their ankles and with how deep they could get into a squat. And I mean, barely get below parallel, like barely below parallel. And it didn't feel great. It was tight. I hated squatting. And then I started reading about motor preferences, watching videos, and I'm like, okay, it makes sense now. Also, what is the 60 time that coaches will check the box on an outfielder? 6'8"? It depends. So, and this kind of, that's a great question, Graham, because it kind of gets into what we were going to talk about with catchers. Like things have kind of changed. It depends on, golly, man, excuse me. Um, in it, best case scenario is a corner outfielder. You want him running like a 6'8" or a 6'7". Now, if the guy's got a serious bat and you're running like a 7'0" or a 7'1", they're not going to care. I think, like if you're a 7'5" or that starts becoming an issue. Um, but again, it depends on how good of a bat you got. So if your bat is elite, you can run a 7'2", 60 and play right field at any school in the country. Generally speaking, checking the box for the 60 time in the corner outfield positions is going to be like anywhere from a 6'8" to a 7'0" for the corner spots. Center field, 6'7", if the guy's got really good first step jump, good routes, 6'7" can definitely play in center. You're going to what you like checking the box is going to be like you're in that 6'5" to 6'6" range, like where okay, this guy definitely runs well enough. Because at a 6'7", again, some of the best center fielders in the history of the game, like a Jim Edmonds or an Andrew Jones, were not burners. Like they were not 6'4" runners in the 60, but they had elite first step, elite routes. And so it made up for that lack of kind of burner speed. Now, if you're a burner, like if you're a 6'5" or lower, you commonly referred to as a burner. Burners don't. The thing that's great with them is they're fast enough to where even if their routes aren't great and their first step isn't great, they can make up for it because they're going to cover more ground speed wise. So again, everything is so subjective. What I want you guys to understand is that some programs are going to think differently. It's not like, okay, he ran a 6'5", he can play center field for us. I played with a guy in college who was very fast, 6'4", 6'5" runner, and was a terrible outfielder. So like it didn't matter that he was a burner. He could not play center field or right field or left field. Like he just was not good in the outfield. So number one, you got to be good in the outfield. Number two, okay, how fast are you? Can you play center? Are you a corner guy? If you're a corner guy, you better bang. Like you better mash as a hitter, because that is that's what they want, right? They want big bats in the corner outfield spots. We've talked about this a little bit in the last week or two. With how offensive the climate is now in college baseball, they do not like defense is not as much of a premium in the outfield because if a guy really juices one, when I was playing, it may be a home run, but it's maybe to the track. It may be off the wall. Now you juice one, it's gone. There's nothing there's no going to get it. And guys are just playing deeper in general because the ball's flying more. So you don't need a really good defender in right field to make a play at the track. He's going to be playing 10 feet in front of the track or 15 feet in front of the track. Whereas in my era, you had guys playing much shallower because there was maybe 2 or 3 hitters in every lineup that you really thought were, semi home run threat. Guys, when I played in the era that I played in 2011 to 2013, if you hit more than 10 home runs, like you were a stud. You had a lot of power. Now there's guys that will hit 10 home runs in college baseball and in a full pro season are going to hit like 4. So it's just totally different now. And so there's just not as much of a premium on outfield defense, especially in the corners. Kyle, you've previously looked at a video of Burris and said the swing was adjustable. What do you see that lets you know it's adjustable? So multiple examples. A controlled forward move. There's a huge misconception, and I'm starting to really understand this more now that I'm working with like a high school team in particular. But everybody thinks a leg kick is like I actually had a hitter tell me this yesterday. He said, "Man, but with my leg kick, I'm just out against off speed. Like I can't adjust." And I said, "That's actually the exact opposite. If you're in like a wide spread out stance, no stride, you don't see many guys doing that in the big leagues. because it's just you have to really be an elite mover. Your body has to be in sync. You have to be an elite mover. That's why you don't see a lot of guys that do it. Doesn't mean you can't, but rule of thumb, you don't want to be the practice like the outlier. You want to practice like the rule. Um, and so he's got a controlled forward move, meaning he's adjustable to off speed. Why do I say that? Because if you watch any big league hitter with a leg kick, when they get fooled and they still are able to hit that slider out front for a double or a home run, what you will see them do is when that front leg lands in the leg kick, they will sink a little bit into the front leg, more so than if you're hitting a fastball, right? Because you're fooled. That allows them to buy a little bit of time. And then after sinking into that front leg just a bit, they'll get to extension again, right, into that front leg. And so that move towards the pitcher, whether it's a massive leg kick, whether it's just kind of a small one, allows for adjustability. Number two, if you watch his bat path, I'm a big fan of the, guys starting, and again, you don't have to do this, but he starts up here and he brings the bat up. And then when he gets the launch position, that bat is falling back towards him slightly. And if you watch a lot of big league hitters that do that, if that ball's lower, this bat as it's falling will stay more vertical. So he's got more vertical bat angle to get down to that low pitch. If it's a high pitch, that bat is going to fall into a flatter position here, so he can turn and stay on top of that pitch at the top of the zone. So those are a few of the things. Again, there's some things that the swing is the swing. The swing is not the hitter. So Drew Burress is also an elite hitter in his mindset and his approach. So he's adjustable as well because he's got a good approach. He knows when to change the approach. So that's another side of the equation. But his swing is just checks all the boxes for an adjustable swing. And again, I don't even like calling it a swing because, like I've told you guys in the past, I haven't really brought this up recently as much, but you should have like 1,000 swings, right? That the swing to the fastball top of the zone is totally different than the breaking ball bottom of the zone. And the swing to the fastball outside corner is not the same as the swing fastball inside corner. So what you should do is get into at launch, and your setup should make it to where you are as adjustable as possible. So a leg kick makes you very adjustable. The bat motion in your load, like guys that are really static right here, like a guy who just is super flat and then loads flat, he's going to have trouble with the pitches down. He's going to have trouble with the pitches down. I really like the vertical starting position because it forces you to get into this motion. It forces you, if you see guys that hold the bat, I'm a lefty, so I'm going to think pitchers that way. If I'm holding the bat here, when I get in, and I'm not even thinking about my hands, but when I get into a leg kick, it's going to come back and like that. It's going to come back and fall backwards, right? And again, we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but that's what I see when I see his swing. And again, he was credit to James Ramsey, because if you watch videos of Drew Burress in high school, I did not like his swing nearly as much in high school. He was kind of like a toe tap, like kind of spread out. And again, like with Donnie Ecker, who major league coach with the Rangers and probably one of the best hitting minds in the game. What he said is, you guys are like, he would tell us, I was in big league spring training with the Reds, was a lot of you guys are Ferraris and you've been trained to be bicycles. So like your setup, your wide setup, no leg kick, not generating any energy, not generating any force. But you're the highest level athlete in your sport. You're in big league spring training, and you've been taught and trained to function like a bicycle, even though you're a Ferrari. So you have so much untapped potential. So that's a little bit about hitting. You can tell I just love hitting and I love talking about it. And but here's so let's go for that's a great segue to get into the catching position, because I think Graham brought up some great questions about outfield and what's the 60 time required, this or that. And again, it's nuanced. 60 time not nearly as important if you're going to hit 320 with 15 home runs as a freshman. If they really think that, they're like, hey, you run a 7.2? Okay, put him in right or put him in left. For example, like at Georgia Tech, left center is the deep gap. Right center is like 350. It's power alley. So you want your guy who's not the best defender in right field because he doesn't have to cover any ground. You're going to put a guy, even if you don't think he's like an amazing defender, you're going to put your better defender in left because he's got that way deep gap, the power alley in left center to cover. But again, it's nuanced. So with catching position, what's changed the most is the emphasis on catch and throw. Number one, and not necessarily. And again, it's maybe not the right way to word it. It's just that catch and throw ability is just not nearly important anymore at the college level. Pro ball, it's a little bit more important in pro ball in the major leagues now because guys can only pick off twice in a row, which is like, man, I wish that was the rule when I was in pro ball because I was a guy that got pick off 3 or 4 times in a row. But back to college baseball, what you have to understand, guys, is that almost every, I mean, certainly, I mean, if you're not doing this, it's ridiculous. But every program in the country now, I mean, you're training your pitchers to be 1-3 or quicker to the plate. So, if your catcher's a 2-0 to second, he's throwing most guys out. Like most guys are, the average, if you're 3.5 or 3.6, like if you have good speed and a pretty good jump, you're going to be, 3.5, 3.4, like that's pretty high level speed to get to second base. If you're an average runner, it's going to be slower than that. So if you're a 1-3 to home and the catcher's a 2-0, you're throwing those guys out, right? You're throwing those guys out. Now again, the accuracy matters and everything, but I see parents and players posting, I threw a 1.78, in this showcase somewhere, and it's like everyone knows that it's not a game time. I don't even like that they call it a pop time because it's not. A pop time is a in-game measurement with an umpire, a batter, a base runner in a game environment where there's different constraints based on the score, based on the priorities of the defense and what base runners are also on the bases. So if you take all that away, it's not even a pop time. It's just like these kids they're like standing up before they catch the ball. Like half of these guys in the showcases, their arms are getting broken off if they do that in a game. So the pop time, just all that is to say, the pop time's not nearly as important. I actually have it in the video for present day eval. It's probably the least important thing, right? Because as long as you're a 2-0, that's fine. If you're accurate on a 2-0, you're majority of the time that's going to be enough. The most important aspect for a catcher, and some of you guys, I really want to know what you guys think because you may disagree. Dan says that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, no problem, dude. It was a great question. Jonathan, what's up, man? Jacksonville University is hosting West Virginia, UF, and FSU in February. 3 of the top 25 teams will be going to the Friday West Virginia game. Oh, nice. So are they playing West Virginia this opening weekend? Let me see. Come on. Oh, no, not this weekend. Okay, they're playing Air Force Academy, probably in the next week or whatever. I was about to say I don't remember that matchup because that would be a really good matchup. But so for catchers, guys, the most important thing I want to know what you guys think is blocking. That like no one talks about this, and no one talks about how before anything else, to be a catcher at a Power 4 school or a really good mid-major anywhere, they have to think you're going to block everything. Because what loses you games in college baseball is free 90 feet. So the more free 90s you give the opposing team, walks, hit by pitch, error, pass ball, wild pitch. So if your catcher can't block and he's just giving up free 90s the whole game, no one cares how good his bat is, you're going to lose. So number one over anything is blocking. That is the number one trait that a catcher needs to play at the next level. You have to be a vacuum. If not, they'll find someone else. Like the bat is important now, way more than it used to be, but it's not number one. I have the bat at number 2, meaning as long as he can block. All right, we're pretty confident he's a really good blocker. How's his bat? Bat, that, and now back in the day, the bat was number four, least important thing in the world. Least important. Like shortstop and catcher for a long time were, and they still are, right? You still have to be a certain level of defender to play those positions, and center field as well. Even though it's probably third after catcher and short. But now it's like, okay, if he can block, we want the best bat possible. Because in this climate, you're going to hit, you have a really good bat. He's going to hit a lot of home runs. He's going to hit for high average. And then number 3 is framing. Now, framing is kind of like in the same position it would be in the past, but it's just there's a way more emphasis on it because strike zones are way smaller. With TrackMan, all this stuff, the umpires know when they're making bad calls. They're getting, they're reviewing this stuff. They know, like, they listen. I promise you, umpires know that, like, people talk about robot umpires, right? And this is a career for a lot of guys. So you want to stay having a job being an umpire, you better get real accurate real fast. Because listen to me, I will cry the day that umpires are out of the game because I think it's just it is an integral part of baseball. It'll be very hard for me to watch a game where a robot umpire is making strikes calls. I don't know how I will handle that. But all that said, now the catcher with a much smaller zone, a catcher who can stick it and bring it up here a little bit, or bring it down a little bit, or come here, here. Like a really good catcher can turn balls into strikes and make sure that strikes are called strikes, right? Because there are some catchers that turn strikes into balls. And so there is a lot more emphasis on framing. So of all the defensive abilities, the most important is blocking, and then it's framing, and then it's catch and throw at the end. Because as long as you're a 2-0 in game, 2-1 in game, that's fine. Most of the pitchers are going to be 1-3 or faster to home plate, and you're good as long as you're accurate. So that's how much it's changed in maybe 10, 15 years. 15 years ago, you were going to just take what you could get with the bat, right? Now, if it's like generally speaking, because some programs still, 15 years ago, they had a really good hitting catcher. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean there's not going to be good hitting catchers. It's just the priorities have changed now. Coog, what's up, fellas? A few more days of college baseball. Yeah, can't wait. 4-game series starting Friday. Oh, okay. Jacksonville. Okay, I was looking up Florida. Okay, so Jacksonville's playing West Virginia this Friday is what you're saying. Okay. Graham. Yep, blocking 100%. Yeah, and everyone's so worried about the pop time, and I'm like guys, we can get your pop time down, like, to around 2-0 in game. That's, if you're an athlete, you can pretty much do that. But you better be working on blocking all the time. Because if a coach listen, if a coach thinks you are a straight up vacuum behind the plate, you're at minimum going to be the backup catcher. At minimum, you're going to be the backup catcher. Because again, the backup guy, the guy who can really hit and he's really good at blocking, like, he's going to be the starter. But if let's say you're even better at blocking than that guy, they're not bringing another guy on the road to be the backup catcher. They're bringing you, because if he goes down, they just want to know that whoever's in the game is not going to give up wild pitches and pass balls all the time. Coog says agreed, blocking number 1. Man, you guys stop brown nosing me, guys. You guys need to disagree every once in a while. Challenge system being tested in spring training this year. Yeah, I mean, dude, like, I'm just gonna vent because I've grown up around this game. My dad has literally worked in Major League Baseball my entire life until 2019. So, like, what is happening to Major League Baseball is, in my opinion, a travesty. Bases are bigger now. Pitchers can only pick off twice. What is it? You make a pitching change, they have to throw to 3 pitchers minimum. Pitch clock. And now we're gonna do challenges and all this stuff. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's not even baseball. I mean, yeah, it's the same general sport, but like the rules are so much different. Like, are the stolen base records all going to be, are we going to put asterisks on them now? Um, and my this is my viewpoint is that a um, baseball right now is being looked at like it's a spreadsheet. So it's all numbers. It's all, again, like, it's pretty obvious from Rob Manfred what he's done is that all he cares about is he does not care about the history of the game. He does not care about the integrity of the game. He does not care about the legacy and keeping the game as intact as possible to its original kind of how it was supposed to be played. All he cares about is maximizing revenue for the owners. So, I hope baseball stays being very popular, but there's a lot of people that feel very disconnected from Major League Baseball and that are in similar shoes for me, guys who were like this close to playing in the big leagues, played professionally for a long time. Nathan Schaefer, what's up, Nathan? As a recruited catcher, I feel like hitting was what coaches cared about most, and they cared less about pop time, more about arm. Just what I thought they were asking and looking for. Yeah, and again, it's what I always say is that at the catcher and shortstop position in particular, certain things have to be there. So you have to think you don't care. You're not going to recruit a kid if you think he can't block, but man, his bat's really good. Now, if you recruit him, you're maybe not recruiting him as a catcher, which happens a lot. They'll say, "Oh man, I really like the bat. I don't know if he's going to catch for us, but the bat's good enough. We can put him in corner outfield spot or whatever." But for catchers, particularly, if they're recruiting you as a catcher, you pretty much have already passed the test of like they think you can block well enough. Because I just watch college games this weekend, and if there's a catcher that's struggling to block balls, that team is probably going to lose. Because again, it's just another way to give teams free 90 feet. And a guy going from first to second and now scoring on a single could be the difference in a game. And especially now with the offensive climate, there's so many guys on base. The strike zones are way smaller, so there's a lot more guys walking. So there's so many guys on base that if you're, giving up pass balls all the time, or at least at a way too high percentage, it's impossible for you to even be worth more runs than you give up. There's just no way you can be. Because again, not only are you giving the opposing team more opportunities to score runs, but now you're putting your pitcher in a tougher situation. He just went from a double play situation to now having a runner on second with one out, no outs. Right? So he's under more pressure now. He's under more duress. That's putting a lot of pitching coaches will tell you that they really monitor how many pitches under stress do guys make. And so if you're putting your pitcher in constant stressful situations as a catcher, you ain't going to be catching long. But thanks for the comment, Nathan. One of our former guys. What is happening in college baseball is a travesty too. I'm assuming you're talking about portal NIL. To me, I think college game, still how it is played on the field, is still much more pure than at the major league level. Now, again, that could change. But like I said, it's like, to me personally, I don't like that they took away the shift. Why can't you change your defensive alignment? I don't like that. Like, reward hitters that can hit. It's like, oh, we have too many. Like, literally, this, I can promise you from talking to people that know, the reason the shift was taken away is because, well, we have too many hitters that are just like grounding into the shift, and it's bad for business. That was the decision. It was not like competitive integrity or anything like that. It was literally, we have too many hitters that have no idea how to hit the ball the other way. They aren't hitters, they're swingers that kind of hope they run into a ball. And because that was what was being promoted in the minor leagues, all of a sudden you run into a high percentage of those guys in the big leagues. And now we got to get rid of the shift. Too many people are hitting into it, right? And I was not a big fan of that because I think you should be able to put the players on the field wherever they are, as long as they're, generally speaking, like, can you not put four guys in the outfield in a certain situation? Can you not bring in an outfielder to put five guys in the infield? Um, Again, it's like, just why? How about we just allow for freedom of strategy and everything like that, and then you bring in, again, pitch count, which, like, okay, great, maybe the game's 15 minutes faster or 10 minutes quicker. In some cases, games really haven't even gotten much faster. So you're making all these changes, and again, listen to, like, think about this: you're forcing pitchers to throw pitches at a faster rate, and then arm injuries are going like so there's just a lot of stuff going on at the major league level. The base size is being bigger. You can't take out the second baseman anymore in the major leagues. It's illegal, or in professional baseball, not in the minor leagues either. You can't. Something I was taught my whole life. You got to be a tough player. Like, take out that guy at short when the double play's coming up. Can't do that anymore. So if you actually look at the amount of changes that have happened in Major League Baseball in the last, like, 15 years, and you just lined them all up, you'd be like, this is like a different sport. Whereas football is like, oh, we changed the kickoff. So now they can, like, the defenders are a little bit closer, but it's still basically the same thing. The heart of the sport is intact. Whereas in baseball, the heart of the sport is being slowly kind of, we don't like that part. Pick it out. And eventually it's like, this doesn't really look like the same sport anymore. It's not there yet, but every year it's like this. I can promise you this: if they bring that golden hitter thing up or whatever, I will never watch a major league game again, because now it's just like it's a clown show. It's a circus act at that point. If at hey, one time a game we can bring our best hitter up to hit, even though he's not up to hit. It's like we're not playing baseball anymore. We're playing some kind of computer game or something. Like, this is like a fantasy baseball lover's dream, not baseball. Um, Welcome to my TED Talk. I'm not a fan of the rule changes. Yeah, I'm not either. I mean, I don't. There's not many of them that I've liked. Mark Miller, no Canes. Mark Canes. No, no. Let me see, dude. I might need to DM Canes, to be honest. Make sure he's alive. Let's DM him. I'm gonna DM him. I'm gonna say the people are asking for you. I get your point on the shift rule change, but the problem was that analytics had gotten to the point where it told players just lift, launch, and try to hit it out of the park. Shift was also analytics. Yeah, but remember, no, you're 100% right. Shift was analytics based. It was like, the majority of balls hit on the ground are to the pull side. So you're going to want to shift there. But if you're teaching kids to uppercut, you're gonna end up with more top spin ground balls, like up, out, and around swings that hit ground balls to the pull side. I got shifted all the time. I did not hit into the shift very often. Um, because I knew how to, okay, they're shifting me pull side, which means they're probably going to throw me, like, either off speed or fastballs in. So I can make an adjustment in the box. I can scoot off the plate if they're trying to pitch me in. I got to make sure I elevate it if I'm going to pull it, or fight inside it, and that six hole's wide open. Like, this is what the thing that I detest is that, oh, well, the shift is there. Pitchers aren't perfect. They don't execute their pitches every time. And again, you have nobody over there. You want to know why I prevented teams from shifting me? All I had to do was put a base hit bunt down. And for me, they had to keep the third baseman there. So the shortstop would be up the middle, and then the third baseman's has to play in on the grass in case I base hit bunt. So now I just have to poke a ball. I mean, there were some times where I would just square around and bunt and just square it up right at shortstop and get a hit. So there's ways to combat it, but, like, no one wants to do it. No one wants to do it. No one wants to free. Remember Robinson Cano? They shifted him. He just laser bunted it down the left field line at Fenway, got a double. So the justification was to try and bring back a balance in old school baseball I hate that it takes weird rules, but it wasn't happening any other way. Yeah, but see, that's the thing. Like, I don't think everything that analytics has brought into the game has been bad. Certainly, I don't agree with some things, but to me, play defense where guys are hitting the ball. It'd be like telling an outfielder, "Oh, this guy's been super late on the fastball, and he's got no chance, but you got to stay in the middle of center field." It's like, why? I'm trying to make an educated guess on where he's going to hit the ball based on what I'm seeing on the field and what I'm seeing with my own eyes on how the hitter is reacting to the pitches. So if you want to listen, if you want to make it to where the shortstop can't be on the right side of second base, okay. But I mean, at least bring. I mean, if he better be able to play right behind second base still. So who knows? I mean, I think you still kind of can do that. Um, but I get what you're saying, Buck. Joey Gallo is nobody. Yeah, I mean, I played against Joey in the minor leagues. I mean, it's like no. I mean, and no offense to him, but I mean, it's I mean, it's a complete joke that like there's people out there that think he's a valuable player. Unfortunately, you strike out 40% of your at bats. You literally hit 150. I mean, give me a break. It's embarrassing. Jess Fleck, I think the portal is going to be the demise of college sports. It's reducing the dreams of high school kids playing college baseball. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, Jess. You're not wrong. Um, I mean, it's just high school kids have to reassess their path to getting to that big college program. That's their dream. So, luckily for me, when I was playing, none of this stuff was a thing. 2011, I was able to play at Georgia Tech as a freshman and, had a great career. But now you got to set your sights lower. Go to a JUCO, go to a D2, a really good D2, get playing time, build up a track record, and then be that guy that's coming in from the portal that is basically guaranteed a starting spot. Like does that suck that that's kind of the route now? Sure. But, that's the way it is. You got to operate in the environment that you're placed. And that's the environment now. So, the quicker kids are able to say, yeah, that sucks. People before me didn't have to do that, but this is my environment. Here we go. I don't care. It's just about a mindset shift. It's just like you have to have that mindset shift. Agree with you, Jess. My kid is losing heart with every new move. Yeah, and I get it, guys. I mean, I listen, I get it, but here's the deal. Every kid I work with and every kid I talk to, I always ask them, you want to play in the big leagues? And they all say, like, yeah. I feel stupid asking the question, like, yeah. And I'm like, do you think you're going to have to make hard decisions to get to that dream? Right? Are you going to have to do things you don't want to do? I'll give you an example of my career. After I committed to Georgia Tech, my senior summer, a lot of my buddies who had committed, and some of them were committed to Georgia Tech, were just like, yeah, we never got to have a summer like the regular kids in high school. So I'm gonna play a little bit this summer, but I'm gonna spend time at the lake, hang out with my buddies, before we all go off to college. And that was very tempting. I remember thinking like, man, that sounds fun. Like that's gonna be awesome. And then I just, one day I was listening to a song and I just realized like if my goal is to get to the big leagues and be a freshman All-American, start as a freshman, like I better go harder than I've ever gone this summer, my senior summer. I better go, even though I don't want to do it. Like I didn't want to play summer ball. I'm committed, I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to achieve what I wanted to achieve. So I knew, I don't want to do this, but I have to. So it's going to weed out like, and this is maybe it's a tough way of saying it, but it's going to weed out the guys that really aren't committed to achieving their dream. Because listen, we all know there's kids out there that are like, well, I only want to play college baseball if it's at a Division I school. It's like, well, you don't really want to play college baseball then. You want to go to a Division I school. You don't want to play college baseball. Your number one priority is getting to a Division I school. And those two things are not the same. Right? A kid who really wants to play college baseball, he's like, you know what? We're not, when we have that conversation, say, you know what, not here, the D1 stuff's not looking like they're going to be interested. We got to pivot to D2. Let's think about JUCO, whatever. The kid who really wants to play college baseball said, hey, all right, let's do it. The kid that's like D1 or bust is like, but I don't know if I even want to play college baseball if it's at a D2 school or a JUCO. So that's, I mean, again, it sucks that that's the environment, but like that, if you're not dedicated to what your goal is, then again, if having to go to a D2 or a JUCO is that wouldn't have stopped me. I would have played at a JUCO or a D2, 100%. If that's going to stop you, then you really don't want it. Let's see here. The only good thing I'll say is that most of what I've seen in youth baseball is that few coaches evaluators are pushing all launch any or what I've seen in youth baseball is that few coaches slash evaluators are pushing all launch any longer. Hit gap to gap and the power will come. Yeah, I mean, and this is here's a great example, Buck. So obviously I'm working on this high school team, and the amount of I think you're right now, but a lot of these kids have come up being taught, oh, hey, we got to launch it, we got to do this, whatever. And like they don't have the batted ball profile to do it. So I see high school guys trying to lift, and they don't have the exit velocity to hit a home run. So they hit a ball great, but it's in the air and it's a fly out. And so I've had that conversation with a few hitters. I'm like, listen, you're not there yet. Like, let's hit line drives. Let's be a pure hitter. And then as you continue to grow and get stronger, that power is going to come. You're going to learn how to lift the ball naturally. But if you're spending your whole time thinking about lifting, you're not going to learn how to be a hitter. You're not going to learn how to hit line drives, and be able to manipulate the barrel to hit those line drives in different parts of the zone. And so I think you're right that people are kind of shifting away from it. But I'm seeing a lot of kids right now that you can just tell. I mean, they're just trained. They got a track man where they hit, and they're watching that fake simulation on after they hit the ball, and then they get on a field that's a very small high school field and they can't hit a home run. So, it's like let's understand who we are. If Kyle Wren, as a senior in high school or junior in high school, was trying to hit everything in the air, I wouldn't have played anywhere. They're like, this guy can fly, and he just flies out every at bat. Like, what's he doing? I totally get the thought of it's hurting I totally get the thought of it's hurting the high school kid, but realistically, how many high school kids are ready for D1 baseball? Yeah, in this era, not a lot. Now, again, it matters what level of Division I you're talking and stuff like that. But I mean, like, listen, guys, this is also, and maybe I haven't really talked about this, but before the portal and NIL, there were still kids that went to like a Power 4 school and didn't play. Like the majority of guys in a recruiting class didn't really play. So in my class, I think it ended up being like 19 after the draft or something like that, or 21, and then guys were drafted. But whatever. Most of those guys did not like become a major contributor on the team. So we had 19 guys. Let me think about it. Maybe in your junior year, we had 5 guys playing from that lineup. So the idea that, oh, well, back in the day, I mean, you used to get a shot. True, but still, most guys didn't play. Most guys didn't like start their freshman year. That was still very difficult to do. So it's like, yes, it's gotten more difficult, but it wasn't like this walk in the park. Like people kind of insinuating it used to be. Would you have made it to Georgia Tech if you were a high school senior today? Probably not. I mean, it's hard to say, right? It's hard to say. I was very skinny. Like I was 5'9", almost 5'10", 153 pounds my freshman year of college. So it's hard to know for sure. I was one of the best hitters in the state. So after my senior spring, I was like 4th all time in career hits in the state of Georgia. So I was a very good, one of the best hitters in the state. Just hits wise, batting average wise. So I still would have been highly recruited. The question is, would a Georgia Tech have looked at me like, again, I was one of the lowest ranked recruits in my recruiting class at Georgia Tech. So if we're only recruiting, like, let's say 9, 10 high school players. Well, I wasn't going to be, I wasn't in the top 10 guys in my recruiting class. So probably not. They may have had interest in me, right? They may have thought he's a good player, like let's look at him, but they may have come to a conclusion like, well, if he'll let him go to a Mercer or let him go to a Georgia Southern or whatever, and if he's good, if he goes in the portal, we'll pick him up. So I do say that a lot, John, that obviously you can't know for certain, but it's very unlikely that I would have been recruited by Georgia Tech, uh, or at least gotten a scholarship offer in this era, just with how everything is and how everything's going. So again, and I ended up being, my freshman year, I led the ACC in hits in the regular season, first team All ACC, freshman All American, runner up to freshman of the year in the ACC. If it wasn't for Colin Moran, still think I probably should have won it, but we won't get into it. And so that is the difference is those guys who may not be the super highly ranked guys, but that are very good baseball players, like I was. Those are the guys that are kind of having a downshift. Those are the guys that are having to go, to a little bit lower level. They're having, instead of going to a power four, they're going to a mid-major. Those are the guys that are getting passed over because you're looking at, okay, how much is Kyle Wren going to impact our lineup? Well, if he just hits like 300 and steals some bases, like he may not impact enough. And again, I don't think many people predicted me to have the freshman year that I had. Probably nobody did. So again, it's just like when you're a coach and you're recruiting, you're only bringing in guys that you think have a chance of impacting right away. You're no longer saying, okay, well in 2 years that kid's probably gonna be good. You're not saying that anymore. The only guys that are getting scholarship offers are because a coach has made the determination in the evaluation that this guy could help us right now. This guy could help us that doesn't mean they will, right? Because it's such a massive jump getting to college baseball. Like when you step on that campus, you are now surrounded by peers. You're not like the big dog in high school baseball anymore. You're kind of the low guy in the totem pole who's not any more or less talented than anyone else on the team. So all of a sudden you're at a different level now in the hierarchy, and you have to understand, all right, how do I prove myself? And a lot of guys, when that happens, they just fall straight on their face in the fall. I mean, they're just bad, right? And I tell you guys that all the time. I played with guys that were like top 50 players in the country, and you're watching them in the spring. And these are some guys that you played against a little bit, but you don't really know for sure how good they are. And then, a week or two into inter squads, you're thinking, like, this guy's terrible. Like he's not even good. Like he's bad. He was ranked number 48 in the country. How is he this bad? That you have that legitimate thought about some guys, especially if you're at at Georgia Tech at the time. We were number 1 team in the country the year before I got there, and then we were preseason number 15 maybe, or even higher than that. And we ended up being hosting a regional that year. I mean, we were a very talented team. And right, like, so you're recruiting class wise, you're surrounded by really kind of the best of the best. I think we're the number 2 recruiting class in the country that year. And so this is the second best recruiting class in the country. And you're seeing guys like, did they watch this guy made it here? How was being in a baseball family helped you in your baseball career, or how has being in a baseball family helped you in your career? So like what I will say is my dad was very, kept things very separate, like personal life and professional life. So my dad never really came home after a tough game. He always came home late, right? Because the games are at 7. So a lot of my life was just, maybe seeing him in the morning. And then once we got to high school, he would get back late, especially when he was the GM of the Atlanta Braves. And so he was very good at separating that stuff. He was also, though, like, I think a lot of people think like that, guys that don't know me will say, oh, dude, did you get to go in the clubhouse all the time? And you were going on trips and stuff? I'm like, no, My dad was never going to let me do that. And I never even asked. Like, we knew not to ask that. Um, if there was like that one family trip a year where you get to ride on the plane with the team, we would go on that. Um, I got to work with obviously some really good. Every spring training, my mom was a teacher, um, but had when they had us, she stopped teaching. But in spring training, we would go down there for a month, and my mom would essentially homeschool us in the curriculum based on the school we went to. And so every day we would go, we would get our work done, and then we may go to the spring training facility with my dad and maybe get some baseball stuff in. And every once in a while, get to hit with some guys, and big league hitting coach or something. So we did get to do that sometimes, but it was very rare. Like I could probably count it on two hands how many times that happened. But being around a guy who basically never was like, he played professionally, went straight into coaching, then into scouting, then into the front office. So he was never not in professional baseball. And so just the vast knowledge, he knew how to set us up for success as far as becoming good baseball players. Like, he knew what a good baseball player needed to be able to do. So that was a massive advantage, right? And my baseball IQ was always very high because, I was having conversations my middle school and high school life about the game with a general manager of a major league team, right? And my dad was very open about stuff going on with the team. So if I would say, "Hey, Dad, why'd you trade that guy away? I think he's, I don't know why you would trade him." And then he would, kind of fill me in like kind of the insider, or kind of a different perspective that I didn't know or didn't think of, and be like, "Oh, it makes a lot of sense." Or, "Hey, why didn't you re-sign him, after, he had a great year for you?" And, he'd tell me why. And so from a baseball IQ perspective and how the game works and um, how a general manager makes decisions based on roster, lineup construction. My dad was always, a lot of these GMs now, they set the lineup. They control everything. My dad never did that. He was always, he went down every day and met with the manager, Freddie Gonzalez with the Atlanta Braves, and just talk through kind of, "Hey, what are you thinking? Here's what I'm thinking." And then they would kind of come to a consensus, but he always left that up to the manager, to come up with what he wanted to do. But it was, again, I mean, I was just exposed to the highest level baseball thinking every day of my life. So that compounds to a point where, as a freshman in college and even as a player in high school, I just saw the game totally different than most players. I knew I had an actually advanced approach in high school, which is why I had so much success. Same thing in college. That's when I look back, that's why I had so much success in college, was because I had a very high level approach that I think a lot of guys kind of came in and, they dominated high school without one, but you get to college, you don't have an approach, you're going to get dominated. And so again, just being exposed to high level baseball thinking my entire life, um, gave me a massive advantage over other players in how I viewed the game, how I handled failure. Like, I understood failure was part of the game. I was not scared of failure. I did not go enter the box with fear. I knew what my approach was. I knew I was going to, I just need to execute my approach. So a lot of players do not think like that, right? They are not able to separate results, like performance and results, from who they are as a human being. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I played with a lot of confidence. Coog, like you said, I can see that increasing your confidence as a player. I played with a lot of confidence because I knew how the game worked. Like my dad, one of the things I'll always remember him saying was, like, guys don't get to the big leagues because of their numbers. They get to the big leagues because you think they can help your team win baseball games. And so he said, your goal in the minor leagues, and this is when I was was about to get into pro ball. He said, your goal in every minor league game is to help the team win. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I get it." And he's like, because if you win, that means your team does better than the other team. And if your team does better than the other team, that means as a team, you probably hit pretty well, you pitched pretty well, So your numbers are going to be better on a winning team than a losing team. And so that's how I played. If I didn't get any hits, no one else was getting hits. If I was getting a lot of hits, I was trying to wreak havoc on the base path. I mean, I was trying to do things every day to help the team win. And I think anybody that played with me would tell you that. Um, in a big situation, I was best in big situations. Pressure on the game on the line, pressure, walk off situation. There's anybody that played with me, I would rubber stamp that, would tell you, who do you want up in the box? They would say me, because I had a lot of those walk off, go ahead hits, stuff like that. Um, Unfortunately, that wasn't valued very highly with the Milwaukee Brewers. Unfortunately, uh, they didn't care about being a baseball player or being um, a high IQ type player that also performed at a very high level. All they cared about was kind of your OPS. So if it didn't matter if you're going to strike out 40% of the time in the big leagues, Milwaukee Brewers are going to promote you. You're going to play in the big leagues and strike out 50% of your at bats, coming off the bench, basically as a useless player that's bringing no value to the team. They were okay with that. And I can tell you personally, in 2017, the Brewers not making the playoffs was totally on the front office. Totally on the front office. They missed the playoffs by a half game. They had guys playing outfield who had never played outfield in their career. They had guys pinch hitting in September who had 40% strikeout rates in the minor leagues. Like, you missed the playoffs by half a game. No Milwaukee Brewers fan ever said anything like this, and I'm watching and I'm just like, this is totally on the front office. No acquisitions at the trade deadline for starting pitching, which is what everybody basically said they needed. Again, you're playing a couple guys who are lifetime infielders in the outfield who are misplaying balls and losing games. And then you're bringing up young prospects who strike out at a 30% clip in the minor leagues, even though they're on Adderall. Even though they got put on Adderall for a year, so they've been better. And they going up to the big leagues and they're striking out 50% of their at bats, and they're less than 200. All of them are like under 200 career hitters now, and pretty much all of them are out of the game. So that was the front office. It was like, well, that was how they made decisions. They didn't care about making the playoffs. It was about, we're going to call up the guys we want to call up. And that's actually, unfortunately, I don't want to say majority, but a lot of teams are run that way now. A lot of teams. And if you ask any guy that's played in the minor leagues in the last like 10 years, not 15, but 10 years, they'll tell you the exact same thing. The exact same thing. Welcome to another one of my TED Talks. So we got a little bit off the rails there, but I think that's good enough for today, guys. Again, tomorrow, here's what we're going to do tomorrow. We will go over, we didn't get to go over the matchups today because you guys are so talkative and have so many questions, and it's great. We're going to go over matchups, maybe do a pick 'em. So I'm going to maybe find like 10 matchups. I want to see what you guys pick. And then like next week, when the games are over, we'll see who did the best. But we'll go over some matchups like that. Was that on David Stearns? Didn't he arrive there at that time? Yes. Yeah. I have some stories about that guy and things that he said, not only to me, but about me or to people I know, that maybe I'll write in a book one day. I don't know. But yeah, like safe to say that me and David, he did not like me for some reason. I don't know why, but he did not like me. And I heard that from guys in the front office. Like, the funny thing is this: my dad was so well respected in the game, and felt like held a lot of, at least at that point, still held a lot of influence in the game, that members of the Milwaukee Brewers front office at that time, it got so bad in 2018, I requested my voluntary release. So I requested it because I just said, I'm 28 years old now. In 2016, I hit 340 in AAA and 350 at bats, or 350, about that much, 350 plate appearances, something like that. And I haven't got it. I can't get a shot. Like, you guys aren't going to give me a shot. I got to go somewhere else. I had multiple members, higher ups in the Milwaukee Brewers front office, call me to vent out of the blue. They called me separately, and basically both of them said the same thing. Didn't know that the other people had called me. Um, FYI, when you sign on, it cuts off. Maybe it's a timing or delay something when I sign on. I don't know. Um, so anyway, I mean, I have crazy stories about that guy um, that make no sense at all. But you know, all I can say is it was a good thing I got out of there. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out for me very well. Um, and one of the things my dad said when David Stearns actually took over in the Milwaukee Brewers was that uh, it's either going to be really good for you or really bad, because he's an analytics guy. He's like, he's not going to evaluate you as a baseball player. He's going to look at the numbers and he's going to judge you either good or bad. And that's that. And it ended up being, bad. So he was right. Um, oh, when you sign off, it cuts off. Yeah. Okay. Buck, unfortunate. Sorry to hear. Yeah. I mean, I hate even bringing it up because like, I don't want to be that guy that, yeah, I should have played in this and that, whatever. If you look at my numbers and like that, you make your own decision on what you think. But yeah, there was definitely some stuff that went on that just made zero sense, and I really, still to this day, have no idea why he had such disdain for me. I do not know. I don't know if it's because my dad was an old school guy. Like it makes no sense from the stories that I heard. And I'll give you one example. One of the guys higher up in very, very high up, like, let's say there's like 5 or 6 powerful guys in the front office. He was one of them. And actually both of them were, that talked to me. And they said, Kyle, anytime we brought up your name, essentially they said, listen, like if we're going to bring up a bench guy, we need to bring up a guy who will perform on the bench. And that's Kyle, because he's, good at bat, puts the ball in play, has a good approach, can play all 3 outfield spots. He's a good defender. Like that's the guy. He said, every time we brought up your name with David, it was World War III. Right. So what makes a president of baseball ops, a GM, have that kind of reaction where someone in the know would describe it as a World War III every time we brought your name up? Right. Because and like, listen, if I'm when I was coaching at Georgia Tech, if someone goes, I think we should I think we should play this guy, even if I totally disagreed, I wouldn't be like taking it to World War III. I would just be like, I don't know. Like, why do you say that? This is what I think. So that's just one example. And there's like 10 that 2 guys who didn't know that they were both calling me said the exact same thing. And maybe one day we'll get into the details of it. I'll leave that as the cliffhanger for the next stream. But that is, that I had 2 guys tell me that who were higher ups in the front office. So who knows? I don't know what I did, but maybe I'll never know. Maybe one day I'll find out. That would be cool. So, all right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. We'll be talking matchups pretty much strictly tomorrow. Maybe a few other things, but appreciate all the questions, guys. Appreciate all the conversation. Again, got that video coming out tonight.